Welcome to Season 10. Are you really good at what you do, but maybe have trouble communicating it to others? Or is there something complex you're working on, and you need to find the best way for others to quickly understand it? Well, you're in luck. In a few minutes, you're going to meet Ching Goh, the co-founder of Piktochart. It's a web-based app that's all about visual communication. Hi, I'm 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗶𝘲𝗀𝗀𝗃, and I'm a huge fan of Piktochart. And I have a feeling that once you hear and see Ching's demonstration, you'll quickly become a fan too. It's time to ditch those dense reports, presentations, and spreadsheets and visualize your way to success. This is Season 10, Episode 120. Let's start the show. Hey there, everyone. As you know, we are doing live workflow sessions this season. And normally I'd be sitting in the consultant's chair, but we're switching things up a bit today because Ching Goh is going to help me develop a better process for how I communicate certain stats about this podcast, the Business Infrastructure Podcast. And we're going to do that through this really cool data visualization tool that she's created. Ching is the founder and CEO of Piktochart, and she's joining us from Penang, Malaysia. Ching, I think you already know how excited I am about this podcast. I've been waiting for this. I'm really excited about today's show. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm really good, and thank you for having me. Likewise, I'm really excited and happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So let's dive right on in. But before we get to Piktochart itself as this data visualization tool, I definitely want to learn more about you. I was reading over your bio, both at Piktochart.com as well as looking over your LinkedIn profile, and you have such an amazing background. And I was wondering, how on earth did she go from a degree in, is it experimental psychology?
That's right.
Yes, and then an internship, I think I read, in finance or for a private equity firm to working in a media position at Procter & Gamble. So kind of take us through your journey, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been, I'll put it this way, I've always been very intrigued by human minds and, like what makes us tick, what makes us happy and things like that. So psychology has always resonated with me. To be very honest, I studied psychology because I intended to be a clinical psychologist, and that was the path that was taking me on. It was leading me towards something that I would have been able to graduate as a clinical psychologist. But in that course itself, I realized, no, actually what I'm really interested in isn't so much like, prescribing like treatment methods, etc. I care a lot more about how the collective, human society, function and think about things. And I did that little short stint at the private equity firm because it provided me with an exposure in terms of like what, how companies are run and basically like I was still new and trying to figure out what next I wanted to do. I had a lot of friends that were into finance, that's why. But once I got into it, and again, I realized like I probably would excel somewhere, something to do more with like marketing. And as I got into Procter & Gamble, and this is like 10 years ago, or slightly more than 10 years ago, and they weren't so into digital marketing. So while I was there, I realized like that whatever I did next, it had to, live in a digital world. At that time, Procter & Gamble in Malaysia was still very much based on like, TV ad spends and print, magazines and newspapers. I mean, like, just think about like what 10 years has done to us, right? So after that, when I left and, to start my own thing, I immediately went into like web consulting first together with my husband. And afterwards, Piktochart came about. Yeah.
So Piktochart came about. I read on the website, it started off with a quote, "No more Monday blues."
That's right.
What is that about?
Yeah, so that was another something. When I was at Procter & Gamble, I went through an episode of like, I call it, it's a burnout. Like there was no other way that I could have, described it otherwise. Lots of reasons, but I think a big part of it was my own, how naive I was about, the working world and what was like involved in it, and I wanted lots of trust and autonomy to experiment and to, you know, try my own things. And as a result of that, I was, like I said, I was just like super burnt out. And I remembered having this like Monday blues, and it was really strong. And this was, again, 10 years ago. It wasn't the time when you had lots and lots of startups like all over Malaysia, and people that really cared about like culture, and people, you know, talking about it and living it. So that was also when we realized, like, if I cannot work in a place that had you know, that had a very strong people pillar in the organization, then I would just have to build one. So that was how it went. Yeah, together with my husband.
Very nice. Now, I can only imagine being at a large organization like Procter & Gamble that you must have read so many volumes and volumes of different reports. Was that in some part inspiration for what would eventually become Piktochart?
Yeah, so I don't talk about it very often, but yes, we looked at a lot of spreadsheets, and they were occasionally color coded, you know, just like
Yes.
traffic charts. So you have, you know, red, yellow, and like green, you know, in terms of statuses. And I was not a spreadsheet whiz. Like I knew statistics, but like, you know, Excel wasn't particularly my forte. And then later on, when I went to do web consulting, and I had to look for my own, you know, clients online and digitally, and that was when I realized that inbound marketing or content marketing was going to be really powerful. And you know, thank goodness I was right, because like 10 years later, I think like right now it's overly done. You know, everyone talks about, and all companies invest in like content marketing now. And I saw that it was probably going to become more and more visual and more, you know, at that time we thought about infographics, because we're like, oh, that's a very effective medium for us to be
Yes.
able to communicate clearly. So that was, yeah, that was also the idea. But you're right, it's probably seated somewhere in my, you know, early career, and I didn't even realize that.
I just remember those days being in, you know, those large corporations, and with the volume of emails and the reports and all of the meetings. And when you're sitting in these meetings, again, you're presented with these voluminous presentations, oftentimes stuffed with content, but not actual images. So
Yeah.
just being able, that's why I love what you have created, or co-created, I guess I should say, in that you're able to actually visualize all of this data, or tell the story in a visual way, right?
Mhm.
So I love that about it. So so you created Piktochart. You have a co-founder, right?
That's right. That's
And
right.
who was the coder in all of this? I'm just curious.
In the beginning, so we even, I think we outsourced like a part of our prototype, you know, like back then, because like so my husband's a developer, but he's not how do I put it, like he knew the back end side of things, but he didn't quite know front end coding and the frameworks, etc. So we started out that way, and then afterwards we hired like one front end developer, and then the team kept growing. So today, I mean, like there's a team of about like 20 developers in the company. So
Wow.
yeah, like that's the journey that we went on from 2012 till now.
2012. Okay, so in 8
Yeah.
years, we're in 2020 right now, and I was looking at some of your own stats. We're going to get into stats in a little bit, but just
Yeah.
looking at some of Piktochart stats, there's over 6 million users. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, as well, and you have over 60 employees total,
Yeah.
right?
We're about 50 right now. So
Okay.
and we tend to keep ourselves around that number.
Yeah, that's still very impressive for
Mhm. Yeah.
your company, and to see everything that you all have accomplished in a relatively short period of time is really inspirational. So, can we get to the good stuff? We've been
Yeah.
hearing good things all along, but let's get to this demo of Piktochart. So, I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, at this time, would you mind sharing your screen? We can
Sure.
do a demo of Piktochart so that
Yeah.
everyone who's watching this can see just how cool it really is.
Yeah, sure. So this is the homepage. If you
Mm-hmm.
were to type in just piktochart.com, you would land on a landing page here. And we have a couple of like, you know, like formats, like the main formats that people use Piktochart for. as well as like who we're mostly geared for. So you would see marketing teams, human resources. Actually, HR is one of our like biggest pillars when it comes to customer segments. Healthcare is using us tons as well. Like they communicate, tons of information internally as well as externally, and even finance and administrative teams. Like they create lots of reports and as you can imagine, like presentations to also communicate. So this is like in a nutshell what Piktochart like. I've already set up an editor like
Oh, look
based
at
on
that, Ching.
yeah. So like I
Wow.
wanted to, like show you what was possible. So I
Yes.
actually did not create this from scratch. It was and you can see like the rest of it's not, it's about data privacy. So we recently created a new let me show you. So when you log onto Piktochart, what you would see is that, like, for example, in infographics. So I selected this one, which was about privacy policy, but I removed the image because I wanted to, put in the world map instead. And then, but you can see that it's an existing layout already. And what I did was I just modified the top in order to include the information that, we would have been able to use. So here, what I did was I just went to your website and I took a screenshot of the logo.
Okay.
And then added a line. And here, so this is our, like, you can find the maps tool. There are also charts, which I didn't include within this presentation. But if you clicked on maps, you would have been able to kind of like see, apart from the world map, you also have others like, just by the continent itself or specifically by countries. So you're able to then, select one of these. And let's assume, because here I've already pre-selected some countries, and I wasn't sure like which countries precisely you had, but I kind of just went right guessing. But what you could do is like you could customize the column. For example, like here I labeled it as the number of listeners. So you could
Oh,
potentially
wow.
have, you could potentially like, have, I don't know, I'm just like guessing, right? So just pretending like I keep
Sure.
going. But you could fill this up, and it's and if the list of countries too like extensive, like to scroll and find the names, and that happens to me. So for example, I'm maybe looking for Malaysia, so I'll just type in the search column Malaysia, and I'll find Malaysia instantly. So then I would be able to add the number of listeners, and for sure we have some here. So
And can I
so
just add something really
sure.
quickly? So for those who are listening right now and don't maybe have the benefit of actually being able to see what we're doing here on the video, what Ching is describing is there is a world map that you can currently see on the podcast website, which is businessinfrastructure.tv. If you go to the About page, there's a world map that is color coded to show the countries where the podcast is actually downloaded. That happens to currently, as at the time of this taping, that currently happens to be in 38 countries. And what I was explaining and sharing with Ching before we actually prepared for this interview today is that it has been such a tedious, painstaking process to actually figure out how to color in a green color those specific countries on the world map to visually illustrate to people exactly where the podcast is listened to. But with Piktochart, what has normally taken a week to 2 weeks to create can literally be created within probably 20 minutes. Just as long as we go into this knowing exactly which countries we need to check off, and this beautiful map appears, and I'm sure we can adjust the colors too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to give that context for those who may be wondering, how did we get to this point as an illustration?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's also like you said, the color can be adjusted, and as you can see here, you could add on like different colors if you needed it, or or just stick to the colors that were actually given earlier. So yeah, there are lots of and tons of like ways to be able to customize this. And if we filled in all of the, like the number of listeners, for example, we would also be able to use like something like this. So although,
Ah.
yeah, so let me just like put this on just if it was, yeah, but we didn't really like, so far we've only filled in like for 3 countries, but otherwise it would automatically create a 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗀𝘀. That's what the technical term for such a map is called. Like it's color coordinated or color shaded according to the values, the numerical values, which would also be very interesting as something to explore. So yeah, so here you go. Like that's just a very simple like demo of how it would look like. Yeah.
And if I may just explain why this is so important, when as a podcaster, when you are seeking sponsorship as well as advertising, this is the kind of information that they're looking for. And again, with Piktochart, what would normally take us maybe, let's say, again, a week or two to assemble, we can now do probably, again, in less than 20 minutes, as long as we know exactly what data we need to enter into the tool. So this is helpful, again, as a sales tool to potential sponsors and advertisers. So for those of you who are listening, if you are looking for a sleek way to visually display any data that you may have, if you're trying to sell whatever it is you're trying to sell, whether you're trying to sell a product or even a service, think about the data that you actually have and what is the best way to visually represent that data. How can graphics be used to tell a story with your data? So, so this is amazing, Ching. Can we take a look? Yes, yes. And so one of the things that Ching also asked me to share with her were some additional stats about the podcast. So we're looking at this world map right now. She was able to shade in specific countries. And then I also mentioned to her the total number of guests that I have interviewed at this point in the podcast, as well as the total number of downloads. And I think there may have been a few other stats that I shared with you. And so that's the information that can also be populated in the remainder of the infographic.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
It's totally correct. So let me close the map for now. So what I
Okay.
did was, yeah, I just remember the template earlier. So I just put in like, podcast stats, and here, like using some simple icons, I was able to describe like, episodes, number of guests, as well as number of countries, and, number of downloads. So very easy like to customize this. So, and of course, after this, it could be the 116th.
Right,
episode.
right.
It's simple as that. And if it was, 94 guests, like you could be updating this like pretty easily using Piktochart. So yeah, there you go.
And so once that's created and you're satisfied with the way it looks, you save it. And then to your point, we can continue just updating the numbers and the actual countries, however, at whatever frequency we need to do that. Now, what I also learned as I've been playing around in Piktochart is that now that once you're satisfied with whatever graphic you've created, whether it be an infographic, a presentation, a flyer, some type of social media post, you can then save it, but then you can download it as either a picture file, a PowerPoint if it's a presentation, but also as a PDF.
That's correct. So let me take you through some of the options here. So we have PNG, which is basically an image file, and then we have PDF as well as PowerPoint. But you're right. So this was created using an infographic format. So it's not, like a 16:9 type of size. And because of that, we're not, the option for PowerPoint isn't available. And then we also have the quality of the download itself. So you could look at, high would mean you could literally, print this out at a local printer at a really big size. So that's what all the different functions are. And on top of that, you would be able to also, this particular visual is living in a team setting. So your team, for example, like I occasionally share my information with, like, I'm in 7 different teams right now, and they could comment on it, or they could also edit it. And occasionally that happens. Like if I wanted to collaborate with somebody else on the visual itself. Otherwise, you would also be able to make this link public if it's not, proprietary information at all. You'd be able to protect it with a password. And you'll also be able to have like an embed code that you could just plug that, copy the code and paste that on the CMS, like whichever CMS you're using. So that's another like feature that we have. So these are the options of how you would want to like publish or share the visual that you have created.
So it seems as though, from a process perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Ching, that before you even approach Piktochart, you need to first it all starts with an idea.
That's right.
And you have to understand, what is the story that you're trying to tell? Is it data that you have? Is it in terms of numerical data? Do you have a lot of content? So for example, another thing that I'm going to definitely be creating fairly quickly is a report template. One of the things that I shared with you the first time that we spoke, Ching, is that I learned a long time ago that I should stop producing these multi-page reports that were text heavy, because my clients were never reading them.
Yeah.
And it was taking me such a long time to produce that content. And then I finally saw the light and said, why am I doing this? It's taking me hours to produce these reports. Why not what I used to do in 12 to 15 pages, I now have condensed to a front and back PowerPoint slide, basically. So once it's printed, it's 2 PowerPoint slides, but it's always printed onto cardstock front and back. And I remember sharing that with you, and you said, yes, you could absolutely create your own template here in Piktochart. And what I love about the Teams feature is that I can now invite other people to also be able to manipulate that template without worrying about messing something up with the formatting.
That's right. That's right. So collaboration is one of the bigger, features that's available on Piktochart. But like you said, lots of teams are working together. Even some consultants like work together with clients, and they would like for them, to get access to that, or to leave the comments, and or take, or actually edit the visual themselves. So there's a lot of, like you said, like it's great to be able to collaborate with people. And we also have this, like for us at Piktochart, so this is, I moved into a different team space, and this is our, like, I have an all hands meeting every week. And what we do is that we use one same deck, and that's why it's so long. It's like a template of which like all the different teams and departments would fill up in terms of their statuses, as well as like what they're working on in progress. And we basically present that in the same coherent format over and over again. So that's like one of the features that you would unlock if you were in a team. And the other thing that I think people quite like, so lots of companies have like branding colors or branding kits as well, right? So there's the ability to upload your own font, and as long as you have a wolf, like basically it's called a wolf-like type font, an extension for the font, then you would, and you're a pro, you would basically be able to upload your font. For color scheme as well, let me just demonstrate this like quickly. So let's say go on your website, and like if I wasn't a designer and I didn't know what kind of colors to use, right? So I might have been able to, let me just like take a screenshot here, like between, let's see if I managed to get, like, it's okay. We're just trying to get the colors, so not trying to get it perfectly. And once I'm in there, I would be able to, so for example, let me see. Yeah, I got the screenshot right. and it automatically extracts the
Oh,
colors.
wow.
Yeah.
That
And
is
once I
amazing.
do that, yeah, I could, let me just try saving, um, saving the image, and now refresh this editor, and let's see if the colors actually appear. They should. So it doesn't take the colors exactly as they are. Like it's a lot more accurate if like provided the exact, excuse me, hexa codes for each of the individual colors. But
Okay.
otherwise, it should still be able to like do that relatively easily. So let's just take a look. And this is where it would appear, where like my colors are. That's basically the colors that we've just uploaded earlier. So the original colors would be the ones from the templates, and basically my colors would have been the ones that came in from like this, got extracted from this particular page. So that's pretty handy for a non-designer to like, how do I, ensure that I stay on
Yes.
brand? Yeah, as much as possible. Like there's a really neat and quick feature to help you do that pretty fast. Yeah.
Wow, that is really slick. So again, for those who are listening to the podcast only, what Ching just gave a demonstration of was the fact that you can either, if you have a color palette, I've heard it referred to as
Mhm.
that as well. If you
Yes.
have a color palette for your company, basically something that speaks to the colors of, that are associated with your company's brand, you can directly upload that document into Piktochart, and it will then create a, what did you call it, Ching? What does it
Um,
actually create?
yeah, just it extracts a color palette basically, so
Okay.
that you're able to access it and use it.
Yes, yes. And you can, at the click of a button, literally, whichever template that you are working within, whether it be an infographic template, a report template, presentation template, so forth and so on, it
Yeah,
will automatically update to the colors that align with your company's brand.
yeah,
That's
that's
pretty slick. Yeah. And
yeah,
even if you don't have a color palette, what Ching was sharing with us was that you can actually take a screenshot of a section of your website and
that's right.
upload that screenshot directly to Piktochart, and from there it can create a color palette that you can then adjust if you need to.
Yeah, that's right. So that's just an alternative. Like I didn't have access to your color palette. So like the fastest thing I could do was go on the website and extract a couple of colors that you use throughout the website, so that the colors that would appear here would more or less be the same ones that you would
Yes.
be using on your site. Yeah.
Yes. That is so cool.
Mhm.
I'm just absolutely amazed at the speed. And I noticed that there are also some tutorial videos on the website as well, so that you can
Yeah.
get up and running fairly quickly in learning how to use the tool. But I must say it's really very intuitive. Once
Mhm.
you select your template. So again, getting back to a process, if we had to talk about a more generic process for anyone to use in approaching leveraging Piktochart, again, first start off with your idea. What is it
Mhm.
that you want to actually tell visually in a visual way? Whether it
Mhm.
be, again, quantitative data, actual content, how can you break up that content using different images and other visual components? Then if
Mhm.
you have stats, for example, in preparing, getting ready for this infographic, I had to provide you with some key statistical facts. The number of episodes, for example, the total number of guests, the total
Mhm.
number of countries where it's downloaded, the total number of downloads. Whatever your stats are that will wow whatever audience you're presenting those stats to, go ahead and assemble all of that information. And then from there, once you log into Piktochart, you can actually figure out which template is going to best demonstrate or best tell your story
That's
visually.
that.
Yes. And then from there, it's just literally a matter of customizing the template, or you can actually create a template from scratch, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, kind of what I did here in the beginning.
Okay, yes, yes. And then from there, you save your work. You can then
Mhm.
download it. And from there, if you want to embed it into a website, there is the code that you can actually copy and paste,
Yeah.
or your whatever it is that you've created in Pictograph. But you can also leverage this. I love infographics personally. I love them so much. And I used to upload a lot of content to SlideShare. Are you familiar with
Mhm.
SlideShare?
Yeah, I am.
Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of waned in popularity over the past several years, but I
Yes.
remember when they allowed the ability for people to upload infographics. And I
Mhm.
used to always wonder, how on earth do people create these? And I thought, I don't have Adobe Illustrator. I don't have this fancy software. And so I would attempt to create things in PowerPoint, and it was just really tedious and it took a long time. And so I just abandoned the idea altogether.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, no, I think infographics are, like although it's a term that kind of rose in popularity like some years ago, but it's always going to be there because people need visuals in order to like it's so much easier to watch this or read this than have it in a paragraph of like
Exactly.
yeah. So this is like I get the point so much faster. I get the message or the story so much faster when it's summarized like this. Yeah.
And if
And visual.
if and if I would love to show people how, just in being able to take what you've created here and replace it on with what is currently on businessinfrastructure.tv. So if you wouldn't mind, Ching, I'm going to go ahead and can you stop sharing, and I'll go ahead and
Sure.
share. So this is the about page at businessinfrastructure.tv. And as you can see, we start scrolling down: text, 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 and more text. It is text heavy. And here's the section where we're going to take what Ching has created and just drop it here. So where I currently have words, we can now replace much of that with this infographic.
Yeah.
And this map that you see here, Ching, this is what this is the infamous map that would take, up to 2 weeks to create, which was, oh my gosh, absolutely insane. But I want to talk a little bit more about Piktochart and all of the amazing things that it can do for fast-growing small businesses and other types of organizations from a business infrastructure standpoint. So for those who are listening for the first time, whoops, there's my video. If you're listening for the first time, business infrastructure is simply a system for how you link your people, your processes, and your tools in a sustainable and profitable way. So we've talked about a process that you can go through in order to leverage Piktochart to better communicate your data and better communicate your story, whatever that story is that you're trying to tell. But let's talk about the other two elements of business infrastructure: the people and the tools. So in terms of people, you actually don't need other people. Well, your team members. I should correct myself. But in terms of graphic designers and some of the other people that you would normally have to work with, you really can just leverage these templates and bypass the graphic design piece altogether.
That's correct. That's correct. And when tools like us became more and more popular, people were saying like, our graphic designer is going to be out of job. But I said no, I cannot.
No.
Yeah, no, because for the really large like enterprises, etc., like they may use us, and we do have like enterprise customers as well. They may use us for like internal communication and pitch decks, but the external facing materials are always done by like design agencies. So so my answer to that was no. Like they'll forever have a job.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's definitely true. But again, I know for me personally, I'll be using this for the reports feature. And sometimes it's just not always practical to hire or enlist a graphic designer, because sometimes you may be working on that report right up until the day before it's due, or maybe just an hour or two before you need to present it before your client. And trying to get a graphic designer involved at that late of a stage, it's just not even practical in most cases. So knowing that Piktochart exists is definitely going to be helpful in so many different ways. I want to talk about also the different versions of the tool, because there is a free version, And
That's right.
with that, can you create, is it up to 5 different?
That's
Okay,
correct.
5 different templates. And then I
Yeah.
signed up for the pro version, but I know we're going to have to upgrade to the enterprise. And that's at that level, that's where you can have other team members
That's
collaborate,
right.
correct?
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. So we call them pro teams, which is basically just the teams function. There is, however, a discount by per seat. So basically, from $29, which is for pro, at 2 seats, if you bought 2 seats, it drops to $26 each. And if you got 5, which is our most popular like number at the moment, that's about like it works out to $99 per month, which is about $20 like per seat. So it basically gets cheaper and more affordable as with the with an increase of size of the team itself.
That's awesome. And I did notice that there are also, is it special discounts for or nonprofit organizations as well as government entities?
Yeah. So for nonprofit as well as education, actually. So
Education. Okay.
yeah, schools, universities, and they do use us quite a bit, like at the at the education. In fact, a lot of our free signups actually come in from education. Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And in terms of the actual tools that are needed, when you're using or leveraging Piktochart,
Mhm.
is this something that is it possible to actually customize a template using a mobile phone, like a smartphone? Is that
Yeah.
possible? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, no. So previously we had an iPad like version compatible app basically that would
Okay.
help you edit, visuals on the go. But then we realized that a lot of people who are creating Piktochart, they actually, they open up either their laptops or their desktops most of the time first. To create reports, you don't usually create that on a mobile
Right,
phone.
right, right.
Yeah. Well, you're able to still make very quick edits, and I have done so like in times of emergency, but it's not fully optimized for for it to work on mobile, but it works. There's a workaround. There's a way to get it to work. It's just that we've realized that the bulk and the majority of us like don't really use our mobile phones to create complex visuals, and
Right.
that like it's not fully optimized for that reason. Yeah.
Okay. But you're right. You brought up a good point that if you do need to make just a quick edit, especially I would
Yeah,
imagine from a content perspective,
that's right.
you do have that ability to do that
Yeah.
through your phone. Okay, well that's definitely good to know. Is there
Yeah.
anything else, any other cool features that we need to know about with Piktochart that we may not have covered at this point?
Yeah, I think so. Apart from charts, which I have not, shown at all, and obviously charts are a big part, right? Like when you're showing statistics, like it's very important to be able to visualize things correctly. And
Yes.
there's a very simple tool. Like it's nothing as complicated or as Excel, but you're still able to get, some pretty good data visualizations to help tell a story. And the other part about Piktochart that our users usually appreciate a lot is that we have tons, like thousands and thousands of icons and stock photos that are free, and you would not have to worry about, the royalty or like paying an additional fee just to be able to access those things. They're all provided for like within the platform, as well as a choice of about 100 fonts that can be used for free as well. So all of these things are, I think, the graphic assets. So like otherwise you would have to go on Google, look for something,
Yes.
use it in your presentation or report, and then be
Yes.
concerned about the copyrights of that particular asset. So we try to remove all that headache as well and categorize, and so that it's easy for you to search and find an asset that you need to help you.
And that is, oh my gosh, that's such a streamlined benefit. Also, just searching for icons, because I have been there and done that, and it's not fun. And sometimes you may find the perfect icon, but they don't match other icons that you may be
Yeah,
using. So
that's
that's
right.
that's always frustrating. And again, if you aren't a graphic designer and you don't know what the heck you're doing, you're trying to
Right.
get all of these different icons that you've found online from different places. You're trying to
Mhm.
get them to at least look similar. in terms of color and style and things like that. So I'd like to share really quickly a report that I created, a weekly report. Let's see. Let's see here. I think it would be under my dashboard. There it is. So what has normally taken me quite a bit in terms of an email and trying to put together a weekly status report, I literally just went into Piktochart, looked under the reports, or it might be, no, this was a report, I believe, a report template. And then I was just able to quickly, this literally took me maybe 10 minutes to put together. But I will say this, I did have to think about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to represent certain things. But you were talking about charts, and that's what I wanted to show here, is I literally just created this deliverables chart. And I think I had to click, well, I'm not in edit mode, but it was very, very, very easy, I must say. And I didn't have to fuss with the axis and trying to, it literally just asked me, do you want to label the y-axis? Do you want to label the x-axis? Do you want to have a legend? What's the title of your chart? Do you even want to show the title of your chart? It was just, it was very, very, very easy. So I just wanted to share this with you, Ching, so that you could see that I literally emailed this out this morning.
That's great.
Yes. And so, whereas before I would have had an email, it would have been all text, it would have been long and clunky, and just being able to send this to them as a PDF that they could open and quickly scan just to see where we are in terms of progress on the project. This has definitely significantly streamlined my reporting process, my weekly reporting process to my clients as well. So again, I just can't sing Piktochart praises enough. It's such a phenomenal tool, and you're doing a fantastic job, and I will do whatever I can to spread the word about Piktochart, and just the way that it can allow us to streamline our different operations. Speaking of which, because I am an operations person, remember how at the beginning of our conversation you were showing us the different sections or the different categories of I guess, work groups? There was human resources, marketing, and I would love to one day see operations up there, Ching.
Yeah, no,
Because
you're right.
yes, we're always talking about metrics and key performance indicators and creating dashboards to show how things are, to show just how efficient and effective we are in terms of day-to-day production. So, so I just wanted to give you a little hint. Don't forget about us operations folks.
No, for sure. Operations, I think right now we've kind of like lumped them, like put operations, administration, etc., like together. But you're right. Like it almost deserves an entire category on its own. So
yes. Well, so the website again for those who are listening and watching is Piktochart.com. That's P like picture, I-K, T like Tom, O, and then the word chart.com. If people want to get in touch with you, Ching, or just follow you and see what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I think both LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So we met on Twitter. So you would have my handle. It's AC Goh on Twitter, and on LinkedIn, it's my full name. That would be Ching Goh to find me.
And just so everyone will know the correct way to spell the Twitter handle, it's ACGOH. And then on LinkedIn, AICHING. Last name is spelled GOH. If you want to see the finished product of this new map that we've created, world map, with all of these really cool stats about the Business Infrastructure Podcast, make sure you go and check out businessinfrastructure.tv, click on the About page, and you will see the new and improved layout for that particular page, which is going to display that really cool infographic that Ching has been so kind enough to help create to demonstrate how to use Piktochart. And once you see that, make sure you then head on over to Piktochart.com. Start off with a free account if you want, just to see what you can do in there, but you're definitely going to want to upgrade to a pro or even pro teams account. I can assure you, you're definitely going to want to upgrade your account. Again, there are special discounts for nonprofit organizations as well as educational institutions and government agencies. As you prepare to use Piktochart, keep the following process in mind. First, go to Piktochart.com. That's Piktochart.com. Once you're there, sign up for a free account. Next, decide what you'd like to create. Is it a presentation, an infographic, maybe even a social media graphic? Next, browse the different templates that they have available in their library. If you don't see something that you like, you can also create something from scratch. Just enter the dimensions and voila! Next, gather any stats, content, images, and other information that you'll need to customize the template that you've selected or to, again, create your design from scratch. Once you've done all of that, make sure you save your work and then download your visual masterpiece and decide how you want to distribute it. I can guarantee you, even though you may sign up for that free account, you're definitely going to want to upgrade to at least the pro version so that if you can download a PDF of whatever you've created, or it also gives you the option to download higher resolutions of what you've created. And with the pro account, you can also invite your team to collaborate. Not only have we used Piktochart to update the infographic at businessinfrastructure.tv, but we also use it to create all of the YouTube video thumbnail images as well as the podcast covers for this season. And I must tell you, my team and I are relieved that we now have templates that we can collaborate on in real time. What used to take days to collaborate on can now happen in a matter of minutes. How can you and your team use Piktochart? Let me know at businessinfrastructure.tv. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast as well as to our YouTube channel. You can leave a comment on this episode, or you can also send me a direct message via social media. If you need a quick tutorial, make sure you watch the video version of this podcast so that you can actually see Ching's screen as she demonstrated Piktochart. Again, you'll be able to do all of that at businessinfrastructure.tv. Look for Season 10, Episode 120. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and for being a loyal subscriber. Remember, stay focused, be encouraged. This entrepreneurial journey is a marathon and not a sprint. Until the next time. Ching, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything you've done, and keep up the great work. And I will definitely be singing your praises and telling everyone that I know about Piktochart.
Oh, thank you so much, Alicia. It means so much to be here on the show, as well as to have your support and to see you use, Piktochart successfully.
Yes, and I look forward to sharing with you, other ways that I'm using it. So thank you.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.